Okay everyone, here is the long-awaited exploration number 2 video. Our last one was about how other countries were replacing trade with Italy as dominant countries in the age of exploration. Your left side for today is a timeline of any 10 events from the video. It may be things I say, it may be things on the screen, or a combination of the both. So this one is Spain builds an empire. So after there was exploration, and you can find the PowerPoint in the barn. That's why I put that here. Spain then became the global power. It dominated the globe for a while, became more powerful than the Italian city-states. So the voyages of Columbus. You all know a bit about Columbus by now. He took 4 voyages across the Atlantic, and he initiated the Spain colonization of the New World, even though he was really looking for a route to increase spice trade with Asia from the West. Now, what Columbus did is, we all know he really wasn't the first to see the New World. The Vikings or whoever were there first. But he was the first European to result in lasting contact between the Old World, which is Europe, Africa, and Asia, and the New World, which would be the Americas. He never set foot at what is our country, the United States, but he was in the Caribbean, in these islands here. Next we have Pedro Cabral, and he belonged to a noble family, and he's given credit for discovering Brazil. He was from Portugal. In Brazil, they speak Portuguese, not Spanish, right? All right, so now we have, who do we have next? We have Vespucci, and he demonstrated the West Indies were not the outskirts of Asia, but are actually far away. Magellan was the first, had the first crew to completely circumnavigate the globe, went all the way around. Of course, he didn't survive that travel. He died in the Battle of Mactan in the Philippines. He was Portuguese also, and was also searching for a westward route to the Spice Islands. Cortez came and then started not just trade, but to actual conquer, to create the empire with the Aztecs. He first went to Hispaniola and Cuba, and he was made the Spanish magistrate of a town. And then he wanted to actually go more to the interior and on the mainland and conquer parts of the Americas. People sort of stopped those plans, but he did it anyway. Here's Tenochtitlan. That was spelled wrong in the last slide. It's actually Tenochtitlan. Oh, hold on. We have a problem. So Montezuma ruled the Aztecs from 1502 to 1520, and he was killed. His details are a little bit unknown, but basically he was pelted with rocks and things. Now, how did the Spanish conquer the Americas? Well, 25% of the Aztecs were lost just to disease. Also, people like Cortez learned how to make allies out of enemies of the Aztecs from the Americas, and also they had firearms. Now, Pizarro went to the Americas also, and instead of the Aztecs, he conquered the Incans. He was actually a distant cousin of Cortez. Cortez's conquering was even more impressive, if that's the right word to use. I'm not sure if it is, because he conquered the Incas with much fewer men than Cortez. He only had about 80 men and 40 horses in what is now Peru, and he faced much larger armies, and then settled in the region, which is now Peru, the Incans. He had 3 expeditions to the Americas. His first one was in 1524. Now we have the encomienda system. In order for the Spanish to colonize and settle the land, they needed a way to organize labor for agriculture. So they did this with the encomienda system. This was an agreement where the Spanish crown gave colonists the right to force labor of the local inhabitants, and in response they had to teach them Christianity. And this formally began in 1503. With this labor, an example of a commodity became the Portuguese creating sugar plantations in Brazil. And they brought this to Europe, and the demand for sugar greatly increased there. The Spanish also believed that they had a duty to convert the locals to Christianity. The first explorer to make it to what is now the United States was Ponce de Leon. He was the first European explorer to reach Florida. In Then you have Coronado. He was alive from 1510 to 1554, and he went from Mexico to what is now the southwest United States between 1540 and 1542. He's given credit for his expedition in discovering the Grand Canyon and also the Colorado River. So now we have, what becomes the United States subject to exploration, and the same thing in this area. They also believed it was their duty to convert the natives to Christianity. Now, the encomienda system formally ended in 1720. The crown thought it was immoral and invaluable to human life to have them serve that way. Ironically, that's when the slave trade increased from Africa, which we'll learn about later. Part of the reason why the slave trade increased was because of so many of the natives dying from things like smallpox, but then it increased even more with the end of the encomienda system. Another reason why the African slavery was more effective was because they could not fight against the Spaniards the way the indigenous population could, who knew the territory of the Americas. So it's noteworthy to know that the indigenous people did try to fight against the Spaniards. An example is Pope. He led a Pueblo revolt in 1680 that was successful and kept Spain out of that area of the Americas for 12 years. He was alive from 1630 to 1688, so it's a little bit further than things we just discussed. We'll talk about this again later. Please write down any questions if you're unsure of anything I discussed in this video on the bottom of your timeline. The password should be the word pumpkin. Put a triangle around it. All right, and I'll see you next class.